Okay, let's go. So when you hear the word procedure, what comes to mind? A lot of my clients are creative. They are very free-spirited, just like myself. I'm a really free-spirited human. And so when I used to hear procedure, I conjured up images of a boss wagging their finger at me saying, you can't do this, or this is how we do it, or a military. Really militant, really authoritative, really rigid and stiff. This is what I imagine when I hear procedure. Uh, my father was very authoritarian, so I always think of him as well. And it doesn't really bring up any feelings that I want to experience. So would love to know what you think of when you hear the word procedure too. So before we start really digging into procedures, let me tell you more about my experience. So how do I know what I'm about to share, and why am I qualified to share it? Well, I worked in the corporate world for a little over 8 years. Started with a small family company in the town I grew up in, which was an electrical contracting company. And I saw all of the operations they used. As an office manager, I was kind of the right hand lady of another woman who did everything in the business. And from there, I learned so much, mostly about the finances, bookkeeping, bidding projects, and it really gave me a great insight into how a small business is run and what it takes and how it really takes a village. And so from that experience launched my really amazing interest in business in general. So I continued to apply to different jobs and get different experiences. And ultimately, I climbed up the corporate ladder in Boston to work with a biopharmaceutical research organization called PowerXL Biotech. This was the biggest company I worked for. When I think legacy brand leader, this is it. They are a huge brand. They have a great culture. They do have wonderful values. And the team of people that is in that company are what I would say are what I think are the most brilliant minds in the world. They're very people oriented. They really see what they're doing as a service, and they value humanity. So it was really wonderful to work with them as a global marketing coordinator to learn a particular operation of marketing and branding and seeing how things are coordinated with the sales and different aspects of business around this one operation. So going from the small business, the small family business in the town I grew up in, to this corporate all-American company in Boston, let me show you what I worked at in between. Here are other companies, and I would consider all of these legacy brands. They're big companies. They started out as family owned, except for National Grid. That's a really big corporate company. But Made Organic, Women's Health Clinic, Vet Organics, Sober Recovery is a content platform. Wheeler Clinic, it's a little covered there. But all of these companies, what they have in common is that they have very strong procedures. They have very strong procedures. They are definitely legacy brands because they are ready to live on and outgive their business owners because they have teams. They prepared for the long term, and they're always long-term thinking from the beginning. So I know what I'm about to share because I've worked in this realm for over 8 years. I've worked very closely with C-level executives, with CEOs, very high-level positions, so that I really have a good understanding of what a CEO mindset is. I really have a good understanding of what CEO minds embody, and it really showed me how the details like they always say, the devil's in the details. The details are so important, and the procedures set the CEOs I worked with up to thrive. So why does this information matter? If you actually take the time and effort to really apply what I'm teaching you, here's what you're going to gain. Legal protection. So legal protection is super important. We're going to go more into this the presentation, but whenever we're in business, we have to anticipate things going wrong. It's just a reality. We cannot live in a bubble and be reactive. That sets us up for financial disaster and legal disaster. It's really better to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so that's exactly what procedures do, and especially when it comes to the legal realm. It also keeps us accountable, not only ourselves as bosses, but the team members too. So everyone who works with us can be held accountable when we have processes and procedures. And essentially what's cool is the procedures can even replace bosses and replace managers and replace so much workload, because people report to the procedures. When it's done correctly, people will report to the procedures, not to people. And that, in turn, will unify a team, create a strong culture, and boost morale. Because instead of competing with each other and having like a chain of command that is based on hierarchy, the chain of command is based on procedures that tell people, okay, if you have this problem, you go to this person. And it removes the ego from titles. And actually procedures really play a huge role in titles. And so if we can make something that is, if we can make a title of positions in our company more related to the procedures, to what they handle, than something that is very egoic and can get to their heads, it's amazing the change that it can bring to a team. And I put this into practice with a client recently, and it absolutely transformed their culture from a gossipy, divisive place to a very excitable place for people to contribute to the mission of the company and be committed for the legacy building of the business, instead of just being committed for money or just being committed to just have a job. So really amazing stuff when you get into procedures, how wide the benefits are. But this is just some of them. And of course, procedures, having them set up correctly, will result in less effort from your team and from yourself, and more energy and more peace of mind, so that you could actually be happy. You can actually not be burnt out, and feel revitalized by your business again. Get to that place where the business feeds you, because that's why we started it, right? We loved it. We loved serving. And so procedures are actually very restorative in that way, because it cultivates an environment that we want to work in, and it protects us. So it protects us emotionally, mentally, and financially. So we're going to get all into that, and let's continue. So I think it's really important for people to know done versus complete. When I was working with a client, I realized they could have really good procedures, but if they're still carrying out the procedures and training other teammates to do them in a way where it's just like a checklist, and they're not embodying the reasons for things to be done in a certain order, in a certain way, then the whole context of the procedure is going to be lost, and it's not going to be effective. So let's look at quickly the difference between done is a to-do list, right? When you make a to-do list, you're saying, I need to do X, Y, Z, dum, dum, dum. And a lot of times it's not just that one thing that needs to be done. It's like there's a million little things that compose that one big thing to be done, right? So we say, I need to go to the grocery store. Okay, well, to go to the grocery store, you actually have to make sure you have gas in your car, right? You have to start the car, you have to drive. And so there's all little steps that you have to do to actually just go to the grocery store, right? So it's a little misleading. It's like, okay, this is the big to do, but to do that, I have to do the X, Y, Z. And so when we write a to-do list, we're not thinking about those micro steps to get to the macro, the big procedure, the big to do, the grocery store. And what happens is when we're not thinking of those little parts, we're isolating just the big event without seeing all the small details that comprise the big event. Okay. So we're not seeing the whole situation in full context, right? And that's often because when we make a to do list, it's something we know we can do realistically, and it's just like, oh, not a big deal, and we take for granted these little things that have to be done. So that's to do. I have to go to the grocery store. I have to do this task. I have to do laundry. Simple tasks that are kind of mundane, very monotonous. We take the small micro steps to get to the big to do for granted. We don't think about it. So let's look at that versus complete. So complete shows here a flow chart. Okay, a flow chart explains the why between the steps. It shows the macro. It shows the micro, which is the small thing leading up to the big things. It shows you the details so that there is a clear understanding of the relationship from one task to the next task that will ultimately lead to the final to do. Okay. And so complete is you're seeing the whole relationship of everything. It's not something just being done. It's actually transforming the experience of how it's done. Okay. So now it becomes an experience. So on the left, we have to do. I'm going to go to the grocery store. On the right, we have, okay, I'm going to make a really fantastic meal for my partner. That's an experience. To do, I'm going to go to the grocery store. So do you see the difference? You're not thinking about other people involved. It's not for anything. You're not adding value to anyone. You're just going to the grocery store. So the complete is we're adding value to someone else. We are understanding the greater purpose of this to do. It's not just for ourselves. That's an experience we're creating. We have to understand the reason, like why, what atmosphere do I want to create? What's the theme of the meal? What courses am I going to have? What recipes do I want to use? And it becomes suddenly maybe a research project. And so we have to not just go to the grocery store. We have to get the proper ingredients. We have to maybe buy some candles for ambiance. And we have to make sure that the experience is felt by the partner, right? You don't want to just throw dinner on a plate and put it on the table and say, your dinner's done, right? That's not creating a fantastic experience for the partner. That's what we do when we go to the grocery store. We're just checking something off the list. And no one likes to feel like they're just being checked off the list, Procedures are the same way. If you're just making a to-do list for your team, you're not giving them procedures, you're not training them in culture, you're not giving your business an experience. And so without that contextual knowledge and that intangible, the intangible values, the emotions, the mindset behind what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it has to be done that way, you're missing out on the actual full result of the procedure, and it's incomplete. So procedures don't result in things being done. They result in an entire experience. Okay. So let's talk about now how procedures protect us. So remember earlier I talked about going to court. Shouldn't be covered. The first picture on the left is a judge. Okay. It's in a courtroom, and there's a gavel right there. And so, as I mentioned earlier, they offer legal protection, and that's because we have to be prepared as business owners to have evidence-based data for anything we do. Because if someone can sue us, which they can, whether it's a customer or an employee, the only thing that will save us is evidence, and evidence comes in the form of procedures. So when we have everything documented, that's what procedures provide. They provide like processes from the top down and the bottom up to show why we do things. So once there's that reasoning, the logical reasoning that can be proven in court via a paper trail, then you're protected. You're protected because it's evidence, and that's really hard evidence. So that's the best evidence. They also protect our emotions from feeling stressed. And so, again, sorry, this big picture was supposed to be last. The picture on the right, you can't see her, but there's a woman feeling very stressed out. And so, if you have ever felt over extended, maybe you overgave yourself, you thought you could handle a client when you realized, oh shit, I'm too far in now, I can't back down, or you went back on your boundaries with the way you did business, or you overspent your time on something, or overspent a budget on something. Procedures protect us from overextending in any capacity. They protect our mind, they protect our emotions, and they protect us from being around people who won't honor our boundaries. So procedures protect us because when we have procedures and we require people to do things a certain way, if they are automatically not compliant, that shows that, okay, you have a problem with collaborating, you have a problem with, listening, and it automatically disqualifies people from working with us in any capacity, whether it's an employee, a business partner. It's really, really important to have procedures because it's really important to have procedures because those are the precedents and the standards that everyone else will operate on. Okay. And so once we have those precedents that everyone else will operate on, this is when we can finally have a team. What's great about procedures is that once we can do it ourselves and we know exactly why things are done and how to do them, we can pass them on to other people who can do them for us. And they can improve things and they can do things in a little different way. But we've set the baseline, we've set the precedent. So when we set the precedent, it means that we are really being responsible stewards of the business and of the vision and of the results, because we're not turning a blind eye and saying, oh, you're an expert at this, I hire you to do this. And then you turn a blind eye. Next thing you know, if these people you hired get poor results, you're screwed. You can't do anything about it because, well, you didn't train them. You have nothing to hold them accountable by because you blindly trusted them. So it's about trusting people without being blind to what they're doing. Okay. You want to have faith in people. You don't want to blindly trust people. So procedures help us also attract teammates who understand the importance of collaboration and partnership and chain of command, who appreciate communication and appreciate having goals and standards, which is going to create a much better culture, a much stronger team unit, and a really great partnership for the long term. So procedures are amazing. They just do so much. So as you can see, I'm really passionate about. So now let's go to learning how procedures can empower us. Okay, so this is the final picture of a man who is, well, he's excited. He's free. He doesn't have to do the work anymore. So remember in the last slide, I showed the team. They were all working together and they were on the same page because they had guidance from the procedures, right? I remember earlier I said that people report to the procedures. They don't report to each other anymore. We don't have to have an aggressive, like hierarchical feeling when it comes to chain of command anymore. And when I say chain of command, I just literally mean the order of people who need to be spoken to regarding certain matters. So for example, if there's a certain matter in business, it's not just going to go right to the boss, right? They don't have time for that. It might go to another department. Like if there's a problem in sales, you're not going to go to the boss. You may go to the sales manager, right? So that's an example of a chain of command. But ultimately, procedures empower us because we gain speed, we gain efficiency, and once these things are acquired, we are unstoppable. In fact, I remember hearing that on a sales call the other day. We were talking about strategy, and I was considering someone's coaching program, and she said, uh, the coach does XYZ. They did this, this, and this, and now they're unstoppable. And so it's so funny because people always talk about strategy and they talk about money and more sales, but it's really the procedures. Like, the devil is in the details. And once we get uh, that right little composition, like the right recipe for doing something at the right time, in the right place, in the right way, that's when we become unstoppable. That's when we unleash efficiency, we unleash time, uh, any time constraints, and we can go fast and we can go furious. And what's best is it's not going to be hustling anymore because the procedures are going to do it for us, and other people are going to do it for us. And so we don't have to compromise integrity with speed. A lot of people think we do when we're automating to technology, for example, which does that. But the procedures, when we implement them before technology, we're training the technology to do them on our behalf in a way that is caring and compassionate and doesn't miss out on the integrity of our brand and the integrity of the human experience. Okay. So if this is something that you feel like in business, you're like, I really want to automate, but I'm really hesitant of giving it away to a robot or someone else because they're not going to care as much. Well, that's an excuse that can actually be surrendered, because once you have procedures, the person is trained and the robot is trained exactly how you would want them to do it. There's no question about whether or not it will work or whether it will be a way that is true to what you, the business owner, would want. Um, because that's where training comes in. That's where precedent comes in. That's where culture comes in. Okay. So, it would feel amazing, I'm sure, to be totally free of having to do these menial tasks, these procedures to guarantee a certain experience. That's why we have teammates. That's why we have technology. And it's so important if you really, really want to be free and live your life and have time back to yourself and stop working for money. The business will make money for you. Oh yes, and these other pictures. So I put these clocks here because it's like it works like clockwork, meaning it goes fast. And then of course we have speed, which I just talked about. So that's really it. In closing, I would love to know, would procedures help your business? And I would love to also know, how did your mindset change after this presentation? If you'd like to explore more, let's connect more on a free legacy support call where I can share freely with you some strategy, really listen to what's going on, and we can really connect and get to learn each other more. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.